So I took a trip into Brooklyn on Thursday. The only reason I was able to do that was because I took a Klonopin. So this was ostensibly basically like I didn't get there on my birthday to visit my sister. We had already planned that before because I told her like it looks like it's going to be really cold and like almost like Arctic cold. And so we had agreed before my birthday that I wasn't going to be showing up that day. I didn't really want to think about it. I kind of wanted to disappear. Then I mentioned to my boss a couple weeks after that it had been my birthday, and he said, well, why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, I don't really want to tell people. I didn't say that, but I just said, oh, I don't know, whatever. It's just things, I guess I forgot to mention it or whatever, and it's like, meanwhile, I didn't want to turn 47, It's as surreal as it sounds. But yeah, so then it ended up where I canceled again, partly because something was going on with my car. I think in total there were 3, maybe 4 cancellations. So then there was the one time when I was driving into the city. I hadn't had anything to drink in like 4 days, and that's generally the way I determine whether I'm going to be having symptoms of panic or whatever. But I didn't take a Klonopin, and so I had a panic attack. And not literally because, but like I felt this intense feeling of just being alone, like my sister had invited me, but I felt like it was almost like you can come, you can not come, it doesn't matter, and I think that's her way of sort of going like trying to ease it, trying to take the what's the word, obligation off of my back and try to make it easier for me. But that's not how it comes across. And so then finally this Thursday, I had decided to drive in. I wanted to do it. Actually, what happened was that she said, do you want to come in when your nephew's going to be here? And I said, oh yeah, sure. Meanwhile, I didn't really want to do that because I knew that there were complications involved with that. It's not because I didn't want to see him at all, but it's because I knew there were going to be complications, and there kind of were. He's very busy now. He's like sort of like the opposite of me. He has a life. He's now the youngest flight attendant, apparently, in the airline that he works for. He was able to do that in almost like an expedited kind of way. And, my sister is very proud of him, and that, that's fine. I think it's great that he was able to do that. But, I didn't want to I'm not going to mention this, and I'll probably have to private this video if I tell her about the channel, But the fact is, if you're gay, which he is, and especially if you're young, corporate enterprises worship youth, and I don't really know what it means, but it used to be sort of like the opposite, like you would have seniority and stuff like that. Now it's the opposite, where they want to give the younger you are, the more they tend to lavish praise on you and tend to promote you. That's been my experience. I'm not talking about anyone else. I'm talking about what I've observed with me, with my personal experience and what I've observed with other people. And so also there's the, what's it called? The I don't know, the DEI stack, however you want to call it. So you've got gay, you've got black, and you've got woman. And I don't know if the black thing works so much, but I know that being a woman, corporations have a boner for hiring and promoting women, and that's just the way it is right now. And, I mentioned this on Reddit, and people got mad, and then someone said, do you have a job? And I said, yeah. And he said, so it's not a problem. And I think I mentioned this in another video, but it's like, I'm not about to engage in an argument on Reddit with somebody. I don't really care what this ideologically captured person has to say. Like, it's go ahead and live in your dream world if you want. Like, whatever. I'm not like against you. I'm just telling my own personal experience, which is very real. It's just what I've experienced. So, in his own way, my nephew, he's lucky, and I'm proud of him, and I'm happy for him. But because he's so busy, I knew that there would be a certain tension about that. But he was only going to be in town for one day, which I didn't even realize. I knew that his mom told me he's going to be here on Thursday. Is that okay? And I was like, okay, sure. And so I decided to drive in that day. And if I hadn't taken a Klonopin, I really don't think I would have been able to make that journey. So another thing as I'm saying this is I'm just going to say that, because I used Apple Maps one time to get into Brooklyn, which I don't, by the way, I know well enough that I don't need to use these GPS apps. But I just figured, well, it's just easier, it'll tell me where to turn and stuff. I won't have to remember it and stuff like that. These apps have kind of turned into a scam. And what I've discovered is, first of all, apparently they've started, and this is what I said the other day to my sister. Before I got into the city, I was on the phone with her. And I was telling her that I was a little bit frustrated and how long it was taking. It took almost 3 hours. It was between 2.5 hours to 3 hours to get into Brooklyn. So you might think, I don't know what that means, and I'm not going to say where I live, but I will say that generally, if the traffic's okay, it takes about 2 hours. So there was a lot of traffic, people getting into accidents, people driving strangely. So anyway, these GPS apps, I sort of mused to her, sort of half jokingly, but I said, the next step with Google Maps is that they're going to tell you, a pop-up is going to come up on the screen that you have to dismiss while you're driving. That's going to ask you if you want to upgrade to the paid version of the app while you're trying to drive and keep your eyes on the road. I don't think that's much of an exaggeration. And I just saw on Reddit, apparently that did happen with Apple Maps. So, Trevor told me that Apple Maps is shovelware because I was really frustrated with it one day. This was about a year ago. And I was trying to get into the city. And it took me through some Jewish part of Brooklyn that I don't want to go through. It's a vaguely ghetto-y part of Brooklyn. I didn't want to take that route. Apple Maps basically made me take that route. And you can say, well, it didn't make you do anything. Okay, yeah, but it was giving me the directions, and I'm trying to drive. I can't use the phone like that extensively and drive at the same time. So that's when Trevor said, well, Apple Maps is shovelware, you should switch to Google Maps. And then I decided, the next time I'm going into Brooklyn, I'm not going to use Apple Maps because it does this to me. They have an obsession with taking you on side roads and diversions because they think they're being clever. It really, in my opinion, it has very little to do with what's helping you. It's gonna help the end user. It's gonna improve the experience to make them go off onto some road that they're not familiar with and they don't know where it is. And you might be thinking well, was this Williamsburg? If you know anything about Brooklyn, I don't know where the fuck it was. I don't have enough of a familiarity with Brooklyn to be able to say where I was. And I was talking to my sister as I was driving through the area. I said, I see a street called, Belton Street. I don't remember what it was called. But she said, I don't know what that is. I don't know where you are. She didn't really offer any kind of, information about it. And I said, I didn't want to go this way. Google Maps did the same thing. And I checked the app. I'm coming to a little bit of a conclusion because I have a theory about what they're doing. And it's not completely a fuck you to the user. It has to do with something else, but it's still a version. It still goes under the heading of the programmers and stuff thinking that they're being clever, But so I used Google Maps instead of Apple Maps because, as far as I gathered, that's basically considered preferable, and it's like considered superior to Apple Maps. So I used that as the GPS. Now, it did the same exact thing. I checked Google Maps before I started the journey, and I made sure that it had emphasize highways checked so that I didn't have to go on any diversions or clever side streets or, quote-unquote shortcuts and stuff like that. I don't want to do that. And it doesn't matter to me that much about the traffic. I'm thinking about just getting there, even if I have to be in traffic for a little bit. I know other people aren't like that, but when I'm trying to get to a place, unless it's like for some literal reason, the road is basically like, it's just really serious traffic for a long time, then I'll take a shortcut. But basically, I just want to get there. I'm not thinking about the clever, shortcuts to get to my destination. So the point is, like, I checked the settings before I left, and all of them were, I checked all of it to the non-annoying settings, like, don't include side streets and diversions, emphasize highways and stuff like that. And the thing with the toll roads, I don't even remember what I put on because I don't care about that because I don't have to go through a toll, so I wasn't thinking about that. So I had all of that checked, and by the time I start getting sort of toward the city, it starts telling me over and over, take exit, 38, whatever, to avoid traffic. And it's saying like it'll be 4 minutes faster. So here's the thing, and then I have to try to ignore it. So then I call my sister and I say, like, I don't know, like, the Google Maps thing keeps telling me like that I should get off at this exit and that exit to save time. Which exit do I have to get off of from the LIE in order to just quickly get to where you are? I need to know the exit now because the GPS is sabotaging me. I need to know the specific exit. So then her husband gets on the phone and he tells me what it is. So anyway, So I ignore as best I can the Google, app, and I take the exit that actually is normal. And then once again, I'm going through the Jewish neighborhood. They diverted me from the normal way to get to where I'm trying to go, which is Tillery Street. I don't even know, is that a really long street? All I know is that every time I go into Brooklyn, I end up being on Tillery Street if I'm taking the normal path, So I'm going through this Jewish neighborhood, which is kind of ghetto, and I'm agitated because I went through that place before and I didn't want to go through that area. So anyway, what I sort of surmised after this is that, what I already said is true, which is the fact that they have sort of autistic types of programmers, and I don't even want to blame the programmers. I think it's just that they have to keep, quote unquote, improving a product. It's like what they do with the iOS. They add unnecessary shit that only slows everything down. So they're adding these features where they're going to tell you to take an exit that you don't want to take because it's supposedly going to save you 5 minutes. I don't care. And that's fine if you can have that feature. Like, I'm not saying they shouldn't have that as a feature, but you have the ability to turn it off or turn it on or off. And I didn't see that in the settings. If I did, I would have clicked no, don't suggest anything. That's what I would have done. So anyway, the other thing that I'm talking about with this is that they'll tell you, take exit 38, because it's going to save you 4 minutes. If you don't want to take this exit, it's telling you this through the phone. If you don't want to take this exit, then say reject on the phone. Meanwhile, according to certain laws, you're not, and according to Reddit, don't quote unquote touch your phone while you're driving. How the fuck am I supposed to respond to an app if I can't touch the screen? So then I pick up the phone and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, definitely reject. I don't want to take your shortcut, you know? So then I look at the phone. I don't know, like, where am I? I don't see where it says reject, you know, and I'm trying to drive. Like, how the fuck more dangerous am I supposed to make my attempt to drive on the highway? I have to respond to what the phone is saying while I'm driving? And I know it sounds like just an idle complaint or something, but it's not. It's dangerous. I don't want to take their stupid shortcut. And then I opened up the phone expecting there to be like a notification saying, you know, reject or accept or whatever, and there was nothing. So it goes by the default. The default is to take you on the diversion. It's not to take you on the normal path. You know, so I end up having to take some of their diversions and getting confused and stuff. And so, but also what I was going to say was, this is, and I said this to my sister, and she had a very muted reaction. I don't know what that means. Was I not supposed to complain about it? She wasn't really mad. It was just like, oh, well, what are you going to do? But, which I guess is fine. But I told her, like, this traffic, for the 8 years that I've been driving from Long Island to see you guys, because I don't want to get into why, but that's how long it's been, basically, that we've had a relationship where I go to see her occasionally. In the 8 years, the traffic had never been that bad. Not that I remember. And I purposely skipped Memorial Day. And this is what I'm talking, like, I was going to go see her on Memorial Day, on Friday. And then I was like, oh, the traffic's going to be bad. So then, naively, I guess, like, I decided, well, it's Thursday. No one's going to be going into the city from 5 p.m. They're going to be coming from the city to Long Island to come back from work. They're not going into the city. And it was just like, wow, I can't read the room, I guess. Like, I don't know what's going on. So yeah, no exaggeration. I think that was the worst traffic that I've ever experienced. I kept seeing signs where it said accident up ahead, delay, and stuff like that. And if I hadn't taken a Klonopin, in fact, I had 1.5 Klonopin that day. If I hadn't done that, I don't really even want to think about what would have happened, because I was already starting to feel like I might have a panic attack while I was on the road. And you might be thinking, like, well, you're not used to the city. You don't get it. You're used to Long Island. You're used to that sort of more country type of, you know, vibe. No, I grew up in the city. I've driven many times in the city. The problem first of all, it's just a problem I've been having recently, but it's also like, I was irritated because I was like, I went today and I went at this time because I thought there would be less traffic. So when the fuck is there less traffic? You know, and meanwhile, like, I'm behind huge, like, 18-wheelers and stuff like that. And it, you know, fortunately everything was fine. But even as I got into Brooklyn, and again, it took me on some weird fucked up route down streets that I've never been in, that aren't in my sister's neighborhood. Google did that. I didn't do that. And the traffic in Brooklyn was hellacious. And this was on the Thursday after Memorial Day weekend. And the only thing my brother-in-law could come up with, because he was the only one that sort of addressed it, he said, you know, maybe it's just like people extending Memorial Day weekend. People are starting to come back. Maybe they were out there. And I'm like, I guess. I don't know. I'm not in tune with that. I don't care about Memorial Day weekend. I don't care about Labor Day weekend because I just work, you know. I don't really have... The last vacation that I took was in 2013. And that was really before I entered the workforce. You know, I don't have vacations. I don't have enough money. But anyway, so I think I figured out what they're doing without telling you in terms of the GPS apps. And one thing that they're doing is that they think they're being clever. That part I already knew. But I think what they're actually trying to do to give them the benefit of the doubt is to improve the traffic patterns by having a certain number of people take the shortcuts and take the side streets and stuff so that the traffic will be more spread out. And I guess theoretically there would be fewer accidents and stuff like that. But again, the problem is like with saying take exit 38 or whatever because it's going to be faster. Well, a whole bunch of other people are on their apps too. So they're all going to be taking exit 38. That's part of the reason I don't really like doing that, you know? And the people who live in that area anyway, they're already going to know the shortcuts. But I think it's still like a big brother thing where it's like, you know, the system is going to take care of you. So without telling you, I think they're kind of trying to improve the traffic by having people take different directions and roads that they wouldn't normally take. The same thing happened on the way back. I was taking the Southern State Parkway. I don't remember if that's actually what it's called. I don't think I've ever taken that road to get back to Long Island. And it said it was going to be quicker. It said it was going to be an hour and a half. It took at least 2 hours. So, and by the way, for some reason, it's always faster to come back than it is to go there. So it would have taken me, I'm almost positive it would have been faster the normal way. So from now on, these GPS apps are no longer really my friend unless, I'll use them if I'm in the middle of like, East Sheboygan, Idaho, someplace that I literally don't know anything about. That's fine, I'll use it. But as long as I'm in the general New York area, no, I'm sort of done with the GPS apps because of what they do. Trying to divert you and trying to take the path that they want you to take. And then saying, just press dismiss if you don't want to take this route, and then you can't find it. And then you might be saying, well, you don't know how to use your iPhone, you're stupid. All I know is that I've been using an iPhone for about 14 years. And so I know basically how to use an iPhone. I'm opening it up. I'm not seeing any notification when it says that. And I don't really think it's unintentional. So anyway, before I went into the city, before I drove out, I was talking to my sister and I said, so am I coming in? Because it wasn't quite set in stone yet, I just got off of work and I sort of wanted to get it over with, because I knew this was going to be a source of stress for me. And she said, well, yeah, but when are you planning to come in? Because we're about to go to dinner. And meanwhile, this is supposed to be like for my birthday, even though it was a while ago now. That's what the reason for the visit is. So that hurts a little bit, And it was a slight shock to me. I was like, wait a second. I almost said something, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to leave that alone because there's no way I can object to that and have it go to anything good, So she was like, well, we're about to go to dinner, so I don't want you to get here and then we're not here. And meanwhile, I'm thinking like, well, isn't part of the reason that I'm leaving around 4:30 so that I can get there so that we can have dinner? That's what I'm thinking. That's my internal dialogue. But I didn't say anything. And this is sort of emblematic of the relationship that I've had with my sister ever since my mom died, which is like we love each other, but there's a weird sort of distance and a coldness there that I don't quite understand, Like to me, it's almost impolite, Like to have me drive. She's never come here or ever said anything about, I'd like to visit your new apartment. Like, is it cool? Like, anything like that. Or her husband or their son. Ever. So then, I'm feeling a little bit hurt, but I just sort of play it off, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool, go ahead and have dinner, and I'll try to get there so that I'm there after you're done. Even though this is supposed to be like ostensibly like my birthday celebration or whatever. I think it's basically a little bit of, in her defense, I guess, like a little bit of, what's it called? Passive aggression. Like, you canceled before, and this is the only way I have to, like, express that I'm annoyed or whatever. And meanwhile, like, I really hope that she never has these problems, or that her son never does. And I mean that, because this is not a fun thing to live with. It happened to me again today. I didn't drink anything yesterday. I haven't had anything to drink for almost, I think, about a week. And meanwhile, I'm still having panic symptoms. It doesn't really add up for me. And it's basically fine. I've just sort of come to accept, like, okay, I'm going to have to rely on Klonopin a little bit more than I wanted to. But anyway, so I got into the city, and now I'm going to... But also I was just going to say, like I said, it did the same fucking thing when I drove back. And by the time I got back home, my cat was happier than I had ever seen her to see me. And the reason she was so happy to see me was because animals are psychic on some level. I can't even say that, like, objectively, like, scientifically, like, oh yeah, it's well known that animals are psychic, but as far as I'm concerned, they sense things, And she knew that I was going on this journey where I had to go through hellacious traffic, and that I was just generally kind of suffering to make that drive. And again, I just want to say, there's nothing wrong with being anxious if you drive in the city. That's not what I'm talking about. I've driven in the city many times, and I don't have a problem with it. The problem was with the traffic and with the general feeling of basically kind of just feeling like alone. Like, I could have... It's sort of like, it felt like it was sort of a zero to them, whether I came or I didn't. I don't really know why that is, but that's sort of how it felt. And so I just had to take my Klonopin and, just drink my water, and it was fine. It was basically fine, even though there were parts of the traffic where it was like really stop and go and at a standstill at certain points. But when I got there, the funny thing is they were all like happy to see me, And I've experienced this a lot with people. I guess it's not that weird, but I kind of feel like, well, I'm this loser, and it's might as well be dead. Like, it's sort of a zero, whether I live or die. That's how I feel a lot of the time, and I'm not really sure that it's wrong. But anyway, I got there, and they were all basically, especially my brother-in-law, he seemed happy to see me. I think he understands, partly because he's a guy. This is what I was talking about with never getting a text from a woman, except my sister. But never getting a text from anybody except a guy asking me, like, how's it going? Are things okay? Like, how are you? That type of thing. I don't get that from women. The supposedly more empathetic sex, But so we got there, and we didn't eat anything because they had already eaten dinner with my nephew's boyfriend, apparently, who I wouldn't tell this to them, and maybe I'm somehow emanating it and not realizing it, but frankly, I don't really want to meet this person for reasons I'm not going to get into. It doesn't have to do with, like, oh, I disapprove or something like that. Like, I understand that this is his sexual preference, and to the extent that he's going to have, a significant other, it's obviously going to be a guy. But I something about it, again, I'm not going to get into it, but I don't really want to meet this person, and I think this person was at that dinner. So it's just sort of like, okay, it's fine, But so we sat outside. They have like a brownstone that they got really lucky with how they made this real estate decision, because they bought it for, I don't even know, but something like $100,000, maybe less. And this is when the real estate started to go crazy, which is, again, by the way, that's a sickness in our society. It's not a good sign. This is a sign of decline. The fact that people bought a house in the year 2000 and now it's worth 5 times what it was worth back then, no good. But don't tell, Neil Cavuto or whoever. Don't tell them that. But anyway, so their property is now worth like $2-point-something million. But anyway, so we sat outside and we were just sort of talking about stuff. And the funny thing was, I've never sat outside there, because every time that I've gone to see them, it's been for only 3 occasions ever. And it's all basically kind of like in the dead of winter, which is like Thanksgiving, Christmas, or my birthday. And those are all kind of like roughly equidistant, So it was nice to just sort of sit out there, and I could see all, like, my sister is really into her garden, and she's going into like her twilight years. She probably would not want to hear me say that, but like, I don't even necessarily think of it that way, but that's basically what, she doesn't really do much except for household stuff, and that's by her own choice. So then my nephew was showing me his iPhone 17 Pro, and he was showing me this, or Pro Max, whatever. And I asked him, like, do you like that iPhone? And he said, yeah, I really love it. And I was like, oh, because I have the new iPhone 17 and I'm not really thrilled with it. But I didn't want to like harp on that, because I'm like the curmudgeon who's always complaining about shit, I guess. I don't want to be that person, but I feel like that's how I am. So I didn't, I don't want to say anything to him to make him feel bad. Like, go ahead and enjoy your iPhone 17 Pro Max. Like, if that's what you like. I have the new iPhone 17. I'm not liking it for specific reasons that I'm not going to get into, But so then he's showing me this app where it shows all the mileage that he's had on various flights, and that he's flown like, I don't know, some crazy amount of miles, like 30,000 something at this point, and he's been doing this for not even a month. So in a way, like, I just have to say he has balls, like, because I just explained a whole story where I had to drive into Brooklyn, and I had to take a Klonopin, because I was nervous about it. And the idea of and this way before I ever even started taking Klonopin, I don't like getting on a plane. And then people say, like, it's safer than a car. And I get that. I get I get it statistically, that makes sense. But at the same time, if you're in a plane, you have zero control, essentially. And I think if you have a problem with feeling like, just in general in your life, like you don't have very much control, you might have it might extend to things like taking a flight, So he was very, proud of this, and I said, oh, well, that's awesome, and then he was saying how he had been to this place and that place, and how he loves going to different countries and stuff like that. And then again, like, I don't want to be the negative person, but I just sort of, because I think he was saying, like, where do you want to visit or something? And I said, to be honest, the funny thing about me is, like, I've come to this conclusion that I just don't give a shit about other cultures, and I don't really care about visiting other places. And I didn't mean it, like, in a sense that, like, what you're doing is stupid at all, because, like, I'm happy for him. But I've come to this place in my life where you could tell me, like, you have a free trip to Hawaii, and what I would be thinking about would be like, can I take the money instead? Because I need money. And that's a whole lot of people would be thinking that way. So, but then there was, I said that, and then I think he responded like, well, where would you want to visit? And then there was this sort of awkward moment where I said, well, probably Scotland. And that's a genuine, answer on my part. There aren't a lot of places that I would want to visit, but Scotland would be one of them, just partly because of my own background, I guess. And it was sort of this awkward thing because they've all gone to Scotland together at least twice. And I've never been invited, even though part of the only reason that my sister knows that she's part Scottish is because I did the Ancestry.com thing, And they all kind of went, oh, yeah, definitely. And they knew, there was an undercurrent. Like, I wasn't trying to cause any awkwardness, but that was just my honest answer. And it's like, meanwhile, all of these people have been to Scotland, And someone listening might be like, well, they're their own, family unit. Why should they have to invite you? So, fair enough, they don't have to invite me. I'm just saying, I don't go anywhere. And to me, it feels pretty normal that they might at least invite me, It's the same reason that I don't talk to my friend from high school anymore, my best friend, who used to live in LA, because he didn't even bother inviting me to his wedding, and now I just don't really want to talk to him. So anyway, then we opened presents. The whole thing was just a little bit weird, It's kind of like I'm this loser uncle, who's 47. And I'm going there like I'm 12, celebrating my birthday, except there wasn't really any celebration because my birthday was 3 months ago. Or wait, 4 months ago. My birthday was 4 months ago. But so anyway, they got me some really nice gifts. I mean, 3 precisely. I guess it's from all 3 of them, but they didn't have any names on the packages or anything. But so I'm going to throw up some pictures of what I got, like it's a show and tell or something. Partly just because I thought they were kind of interesting. So I don't really know who chose what. To be honest, I think my sister probably chose all of these because she's the only one who ever talks to me enough or follows me on social media and stuff to know sort of what I'm into. So she gave me a collection of short stories by Philip K. Dick. I already have one of these books, but this one has The Minority Report, which I was very happy with. I haven't read any of it yet, but I have the one with Will, Your Dreams for Wholesale. What's it called? We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. That's what it's called, and that's the short story that Total Recall was based on, and that's one of my favorite short stories. So hopefully The Minority Report is almost as good. I don't know. I couldn't watch the movie. Again, people get annoyed with me, but all I can say is my personal reaction to things. I couldn't watch that movie partly because the Jewish guy at the beginning of the movie who's about to commit the crime, there's something so insanely off-putting about him. And I know that on some level that's intentional, But there's something insanely off-putting about him, his bitch wife who's cheating on him with the Chad, and then Tom Cruise comes sweeping in. Something about all of that was so off-putting to me that I thought, no, I can't deal with this. And then Tom Cruise's character, who's really serious, like how Tom Cruise is, he's really serious and he's built and he's very almost militaristic, in his quest to police the actions by criminals who haven't even committed the crime yet. Something about his intensity was off-putting to me. So I didn't watch the movie. I only watched about 20 minutes of it, and that was enough for me to know, I only have so much time in this life. I'm not going to watch this. I'd rather watch some random person on YouTube. But what I was going to say was that We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. The Total Recall is one of the best movies based on a Philip K. Dick book that I've ever, or story that I've ever seen. Even though, Arnold Schwarzenegger is not really an accurate representation of Quaid or whatever his name was, it's still close enough where you're watching a movie and you're like, oh wow, they actually respected the source material, because that's not necessarily that common. But just as an aside, like, I would highly suggest anyone who likes the movie Total Recall to read that short story, because it's not really that long. In my opinion, it's better than the movie. I know that's like a pretentious thing to say, but I liked the movie. I thought it was a great movie. I'm just saying, personally, I thought the short story edged it out a little bit, and it had this weird surprise ending that, as far as I remember, was not present in the movie in any way. Then they got me this comic book that says Tales of Paranoia. It's, I think, the latest graphic novel, even though it's really a comic book, by Robert Crumb. So I didn't really know he was still active, but I started reading that, and it just occurred to me, like, I was like, wow, some people are really, like, active into old age, and it doesn't seem to affect them much, Or, like, the material that he's writing is basically the same kind of thing that he was doing in the 60s, and it doesn't seem like it's all AI'd out, like it's been fucked up with computer graphics or computer anything. It really does seem like it's his own drawings, and that maybe they touched it up or in some way digitally, like, cleaned it up or something, but it doesn't seem like it's fucked with, And it's surprisingly modern because it deals with themes about COVID-19 and, Robert Crumb not knowing whether he should trust the government and stuff like that. And it's funny because if you think about the political aspect of that, basically the media has tried to make it so that you've got two camps. You've got the trust the science liberal camp, and they're all pro-vaccine. And then you've got the stupid Luddite, puddle jumpers, with a piece of straw in their mouth, that all distrust the government and they're against the vaccine. That's the media depiction. And of course, reality has very little to do with that, because I don't think Robert Crumb is particularly known as a conservative, and yet he has these anti-COVID vaccine ideas in his latest comic book. So then the third thing that they got me was this, the Share Zone mug. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a big fan of this collective called The Share Zone. When I did my apartment tour, I had, I had the artwork all over my wall. And this mug says, all computers must do as I say, stop guessing what I want. Do not ever, quote unquote, remind me later. So I like that. I don't really need any more mugs, but I was happy to have it. I pretty much like anything from the Share Zone. It's like absurdist humor. It's this sort of thing. It's sort of I've explained this before, but it's sort of like a parody of the No Fear stickers from the 90s. So like this sort of 90s aesthetic of like no fear and like to the extreme, but the subject matter inherently conflicts usually with that sort of presentation. So it'll be sort of like someone who's very like self-deprecating or talking about how introverted or whatever or scared they are. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying I like the, I guess the juxtaposition of those two things, because they're conflicting. Because you have this, it's an absurd type of humor. So you have a depiction of like a skull and like fire in the background or something like that. And it's supposed to look kind of scary or extreme, but at the same time, it's going to be some sort of self-deprecating message about how all the person is going to do is be online all weekend or something like that. So yeah, that's what I got for my birthday. Oh, and also, I had to remind them of this, but one thing my sister told me, like before I went in, this was a couple months ago, but she said, do you have any interest in like some old headphones and stuff? Because I have old headphones that I'm not using anymore. And I said, well, yeah, sure. Like I'll take them if you don't want. And in fact, I need new headphones because like I said, I don't really buy anything. The pair of headphones that I have, and that still work. It's not like they're bad, but the plastic of them is broken, so that I had to put like tape around it. So those are literally 11 years old at this point. And I looked for a new pair of them online, but I couldn't. They're not available anymore. So she gave me like a box filled with like musical, audio related like equipment that I haven't actually looked through yet. I feel like half the time, like I'm sort of like, I'm distracted by shit, you know? But I'm going to look through that, and I really just generally enjoy audio equipment. And I was recently trying to figure out how to make a direct line from my, my piano keyboard into the computer so I can record direct, because to play at the volume I want to play at, it means that my neighbors are going to hear me, which I don't want them to do. And I mean, specifically, I don't want them to complain, but also I don't really want them to hear what I'm doing. So, which is partly why I use headphones sometimes, but while I'm playing. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if I record myself playing anything, I want to be able to direct record the audio into the computer. So I don't know if anything she gave me is going to help facilitate that, but I kind of have a feeling it won't. But so yeah, that was what I did, and I was very, to the extent that I can even say I'm ever proud of myself, I was proud of myself for doing that, because I really didn't want to drive. I didn't want to drive in there. And it's not like I universally hate driving in there, but I've recently been having these symptoms, you know? And it's been making it harder. And I think she doesn't really understand it, and that's fine. I don't really want her to have to understand it, because it's not something that I would want people to have to experience. Anyway, I think I said this already, but I think I'm being sort of vaguely shadow banned on YouTube, and I have, as of right now, I have 5 subscribers, and it's sort of like I'm talking to this very small group of people. And like I said, I basically asked for it, but I am going to continue to use this account, and at some point, I think, you know, it'll hit some sort of saturation point where Google will decide to start putting my stuff into the algorithm. I did that Jewish video, and then, I could see that it was getting some traction, so I put it on private, because I said that that's what I was going to do if that happened with that video. And part of the reason I'm mentioning that, because people are going to say, well, your videos are boring, or they're niche, or what, that's why. And it's like, okay, maybe, but the last 2 accounts that I had, when I had just started them, like almost immediately, for whatever reason, some of the videos I was doing had gone into the algorithm, and it would be like I'd get 100 or 50 or 100 views on a video where I basically had 0 subscribers. So that was my previous experience, and that's not being replicated now. But again, like I said, it's fine with me, because I'm basically doing like audio journals, however you want to say it, and I basically accept that. So whatever. But that's about all. I just wanted to relate my experience of driving into Brooklyn, and that from now on, I'm not going to use the GPS, and I don't have to, because it's not that complicated. But next time, I'm not going to use the GPS. I'm not going to go through whatever weird ghetto-ish area that is. And you might be thinking like, well, you've lived a privileged life, or you've lived a sheltered life or something like that. First of all, that's not really the case. But second of all, it's not really about, it's about the vibe. So whatever that neighborhood that I went through, it depressed me. I don't want to go through, I don't care if it takes 2 minutes longer, which is what Google cares about. I just want to go through the normal route that I take to get to where my sister lives in Brooklyn. Anyway, that's about all. Thanks for listening.